Hi everyone, welcome back to the Dish on Aging. Today is February 21st, 2021. Today is episode 9 and we will be talking about how to find out more information about the interaction between stress and emotion and stress and medical diagnosis. This was a question that was submitted by a viewer. It's a fantastic question. This is what I do as a clinical psychologist is I spend my day discussing with people these connections between stress and the impact on our mind-body connection. And then I also work with people on how to develop coping with whatever's causing their stress so that their stress level can come down. And then the symptoms of depression and anxiety come down. And when your stress level comes down, then that can actually help some, not all, but some of your medical conditions to improve. One of the more obvious medical conditions is hypertension or high blood pressure. Also, when our stress level is lower, then we are able to do what our doctor says. We're able to follow our heart healthy diet better. We are able to just do everything that helps us to be healthy, interact with other people, be calm, be pleasant in our day, to be able to be active and focused. And to answer that question in one sentence, what can I do to learn more? One of the most important things people can do if they're feeling stress is to conduct your own Google search. Google stress and emotion, and put in the emotion, whatever emotion you're feeling. Under stress, common emotions might be anxiety, depression, anger. Put stress and anger. Then I recommend that people go to two fantastic websites that I recommend are the National Institute of Health and Webmd. If you put those two words in, stress and anger, then probably the top 5 or 6, within the top 5 or 6 items that come up where you can learn more about that topic, chances are very good. One of them will be WebMD, one of them will be the National Institute of Health. Then you can click on that and you'll get more information about stress and anger. It will be general information, but you'll get a good overview on the connection between stress and anger, and they'll give some broad brush, so some very general ideas on how to manage that. And you can do the same thing for stress and your medical diagnosis. Let's say it's stress and heart disease. And what is really important when you Google stress and heart disease and you go to the National Institute website, that website will talk about how it is that stress can sometimes make it difficult to manage heart disease. And they can sometimes give suggestions on how to reduce stress when somebody is living with that diagnosis. So that, in a nutshell, is how you learn more information about stress and emotion, stress and mental health, or stress. It can be stress and mental health or stress and medical diagnosis. Before we get to that, I want to give you all an update on the COVID distribution, COVID vaccination distributions here in Pennsylvania. The chaos continues. The two big news stories are, let me start here specific to Bucks County. Bucks County launched its 3 sites at the 3 community college locations. They made the announcement on Monday that they would be launching and administering about 500 vaccinations a day across those 3 locations. By Tuesday noontime, they had to shut the whole thing down. And let me tell you why. There was a huge snafu in getting people scheduled. I think this is sort of human error in whoever came up with this idea. What was happening is, as the county explained to it, the county officials have explained, is that last week over 5,000 invitations went out by email for people that they were doing first come, first serve on those who had registered with the county listing of those of us who are in that 1A category. They just took the top 5,000 people. If you had an email, they sent you an email. If you didn't have an email, they gave you a call. And they scheduled people. For those who had the email, this is where the human error, sort of, I think, poor judgment and rollout came. They said, we're going to give you a super secret, means please do not share this with anyone, link that you go into that link and then you schedule your appointment. By about 2 hours Tuesday into the first day of their rollout, they realized, the county officials realized, that those super secret email links were no longer super secret, that somebody had posted them publicly on social media. And of course, once some, let's say a grandparent received that diagnosis, he made sure that all of his children, all of people in their his family, his brothers, sisters, children, maybe even grandchildren who were also in that 1A group got access to his listing. And then somebody else, I don't know who, put it on social media, unbeknownst to the county officials who were running this vaccination site. So all kinds of people showed up. Some were eligible, but they weren't one of the 5,000, and some were not even eligible. So they had to shut the situation down. They had to cancel all appointments and reschedule. So that was a snafu that the county has said that they have now fixed. So we're moving forward with it. I think it's 5 or 6 days a week. If you're on the county list, they're going first come, first serve. I don't know how they're doing it, but I hope they're not using that super secret link anymore, but they're getting people scheduled. If you'd already been scheduled for the county, they probably have called you to reschedule. So that was snafu number 1. Snafu number 2 is somewhere in Pennsylvania. Remember, there were, I said this last week, 1,700 distribution sites in the state for the COVID vaccination. And one or more of the sites somehow had, I think it was 200,000 doses that were earmarked for second doses, and somebody gave them all out as first doses. So that's good news for the extra 100, 200,000 people who got first doses, but that has left the state in a pinch because now there are a lot of people looking for their second doses. They even have appointments for their second doses, and those second doses have been given out, and the state's not sure when the next couple hundred doses are going to come in. So I don't know how they're going to straighten that out, but there's a lot of finger pointing. The state has said they're not going to say what distribution site or sites made the error. What they have done in Harrisburg, partly probably in response to this, is they've hired an outside firm that they're calling in for some help because it has been so chaotic. By the way, we're no longer 50th. I think we're now 43. So Pennsylvania didn't get better this week in distribution. I think other states just sort of must have gotten worse because we're not the absolute bottom, but we're 43rd out of the 50 states in terms of inefficiency in getting these vaccinations distributed. They're also talking in Harrisburg as a fix for this. Somebody has finally realized what we need is a master list, and not just a master list of first come, first serve, and in terms of those in the 1A group. But also, I learned this week, counties are doing things different. My county says age 65 and older, you're in that first group. Philadelphia County is saying you have to be age 75 and older. In addition to the 2 categories of all healthcare workers, I fall into that, and also anyone between the ages of 16 and 64 who has a medical condition. You only have to qualify for one of these. So if you're 80 years old, you don't have to be getting together a list of your all your medical conditions as well. So the state has decided to hire a firm to try to get some organization. They're discussing the idea of one master list throughout the whole state. And that's where we are. So they're identifying where the problems are. And, oh, by the way, the 1,700 sites throughout the state is in the process of reducing that to 200 or 300. They felt that in retrospect, the error with the 200,000 doses was perhaps related because it's so chaotic with so many different sites. So that's the update. The chaos continues. We are still moving forward. Look for your emails, look for your telephone calls. If you have gotten called and you already have a scheduled appointment, don't be alarmed if that appointment has to be rescheduled because of the 2 snafus that came up last week. Also, Bucks County is now getting honest with the idea. They're not expecting their next shipment, I think, till the March sometime. March is only like, what, a week away? But they don't know when their next shipments are coming in anyway. So those of us who are in that first group, and I'm in that first group, we can still expect that we're going to have to wait until we are contacted. I love when I hear on the national news, Dr. Fauci and others saying everyone in the country is going to be vaccinated. Who wants to be vaccinated is going to be vaccinated by the July. I'm looking at my calendar on my computer here. Remember, we are now 43rd in the list of efficiency. I don't think Pennsylvania is going to have everybody vaccinated by July, just because we're doing all we can do just to get through this first group. Oh, by the way, the other thing the state is trying to do is they've realized that it's a problem that everybody in the house has to sign up independent and different. And I've been talking about this in the last 2 weeks. For example, you may, be able to get your mother an appointment, you bring your mother down, and then your brother said, why didn't you bring my mother-in-law? So it is it's chaotic. It's the way the system is set up. And in Harrisburg, what they're looking at is a sign up of, look, I've got 3 people in my home, or myself and 2 other people. We'd like to come down and get a shot. And so they're looking at how to help that also become much more efficient, especially because so many in this first group may not even drive, or maybe have not been out of the house for several months, maybe even a year, and will need assistance with that as well. So that's sort of the progress. We are bumbling along. We are taking 1 step forward. Sometimes it feels like we're taking 2 steps back, but they are fixing the problems on the state level and the county level as they come up. Okay, so that's the COVID vaccination distribution update. Now I'm going to talk about the topic of today. I gave you a nice summary on how to get more information through a Google search. What I also want to talk about is one of the biggest challenges about stress. Stress can cause symptoms of anxiety and depression, and it goes the other way as well. Symptoms of anxiety and depression can become their own stressor. And one of the challenges is when we have stress, when we're under stress, and we know when we are. There'll be times in our life when we're calm, we're not worrying about anything. And then when we have a stress, if it's something we've dealt with in the past, for example, my stress, how many months ago was it? About 6 months ago, I stepped on a scale and saw how much COVID weight that I had gained. And that was a stress, but I knew what I had to do. I had to cope with it. I had to deal with it. I have always struggled with weight gain throughout my life. So if there's one thing I know how to do, it's to lose weight. So with that stressor, I know I have to eat healthy. I have to focus on meal portion, and I have to look at how to increase my exercise. And it took a little bit of creativity with that because joining a gym was not an option this past year. So it was a stress. It's a stress I'd encountered before. I knew what I had to do in terms of coping response, and then I enacted it, and thank goodness my COVID weight is off. And my own medical doctor is going to be happy to hear I'm now working on the next 15 pounds she told me she wanted me to lose the last time I saw her. So now I'm working on that, so that's good. So some stressors that come up, we've already had them before at some point in our life, and so we know what we have to do. We know what the coping is, so that's good. For many of us, because life is what it is and it's constantly changing, we will have times in our life when we encounter a stressor or something causes us to become stressed that we've never encountered before. And that calls upon us, we may have to develop new coping with that stress, a new coping response. Maybe something that we've never encountered anything like this before, so we have to figure this out. And that's actually where, when you get a new diagnosis or something that causes you stress, to do a Google search, go to the National Institute of Health. They give some really good suggestions on how to cope to reduce stress related to a new diagnosis. So keep in mind that stress causes emotional challenges and also medical condition. It contributes, not absolutely cause, medical condition and emotional, but a high risk. It contributes, and if you already have a diagnosis, stress can make it worse. That's why management of stress is so important. Also, medical conditions and also just having anxiety and depression itself, those can become their own stressors. What's really great about anxiety and depression is that there's a slogan from the American Psychological Association that goes back several years. And that slogan is treatment works. Going for counseling for symptoms or going for mental health care, going to a psychiatrist for medication. If somebody is living with a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, treatment works. And that is great because it brings down that stressor of that diagnosis. There's been a lot of talk about stigma related to mental health treatment. As I've mentioned in a previous video, I don't see that because I only receive the calls from people looking for care. But the old treatment works slogan, if you know somebody who seems to be exhibiting symptoms of anxiety and or depression or any other behavioral health diagnosis, treatment works. It really is effective. Okay, so with medical conditions, as we get older, we are much more likely, by the time we reach age, I think it's 50, I think we have a percentage chance of having a chronic medical condition. And that can be something like high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, osteoporosis. And once we have an ongoing disease, it doesn't mean it's affecting us every moment of every day. It just means we're under treatment for that, and we might have to change our activities some. Somebody gets a diagnosis of high blood pressure, they may have to focus on taking medicine every day, watching their stress level, and eating a low sodium or a low salt diet. And then actually then following that new routine can be a stressor. So having a medical condition itself can then become its own stressor, and things then can circle back around. By the time we're 65 years old, statistically, we have an 80% chance that we have at least 2 chronic medical conditions we're living with. It might be heart disease and also high blood pressure, or it could be heart disease and now arthritis. And so the more medical conditions we have, that can increase our stress level, because particularly the more we have to focus in on what do we have to do to manage this condition or to obtain treatment for this condition. Depending the answer to that question will determine how much stress. And how much stress we have from as many medical conditions as we have, over time, that can lead to depression. I see a lot of that in my practice. Somebody's been now they're just overwhelmed. Too many medical conditions. So we use and how to cope, and then how do you deal with both at the same time. And so that's the work that I do with people, is we zero in and then use the actual psychotherapy as one of the coping responses, one way to cope with more than one medical condition. Then I work with people on a lot of levels on how to increase coping or to reduce the stress or to get more help coming in to help with the management of the stress or with the medical condition itself. So all of this like goes around in a big circle. It really does when we're looking at stress, emotions, stress, medical. It can also go medical can cause stress, emotions can cause stress. And then much more likely once we get older, and that cutoff might be even 50 and older, or 60 and older, 80 and older, we actually can have presentations of medical conditions where the only symptom is an emotional. I had somebody say to me, she said, I'm thinking about blocking my sister's telephone number. All last week when she called me, she was so not herself. I think she's got that dementia more than I do now. And I'm really concerned about that, and I don't know what to do. She calls, and then 2 minutes later, she forgets that she called. And then she's yelling at me about things that happened. They really did happen, but I was 10 years old at the time. And I said to this person, oh dear, your sister may need to go to the doctor today. And he said, oh yeah. My nephew said he's taking his mother right away. I had to call him because this is what the woman, it's a hypothetical situation. I had to call him to say that my sister has just completely fallen apart now. And I never found out because it didn't matter, but chances are very good that this woman who is up in years in her 80s was probably having some type of medical condition. Now, it can be any one of many, 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 many different medical conditions. Maybe her blood sugars were off because of her diabetes. Maybe she had was dehydrated and didn't know it. One of the more common is a urinary tract or a bladder infection or an infection somewhere that once she gets that medical diagnosis and then gets treatment for that medical diagnosis, all of the behavioral health symptoms go away. Her memory comes back. She's not irritable. She's not calling up her sister and complaining about everything. And depending on what the medical condition is, hopefully her sister will remember and call up and say, Jesus, I was out of it. I got that medical condition taken care of. And I just, if I ever call you up and talk like that again, tell me to go call my son to get me to the hospital. It can happen when we're younger. It can happen when we're in our 20s and 30s, but it's not nearly as common as we get older. Just our bodies being so much more vulnerable. And sometimes when we look anxious or depressed, for example, somebody can be very, very anxious, and it can be a medical, something's going on medically that has them anxious. Occasionally I'll receive a referral for depression, and I'll be talking to the person and I'm like, what does your doctor say? And it's the reason why it's so important that sometimes a first stop, if somebody out of the blue and for no reason has behavioral health symptoms, chances are good, or stress, chances are good that might entirely be a medical condition and have nothing to do with the stress going on in your life. So that adds to the complexity and the richness of our lives as we get older, trying to sort through all of this. One of the things that I'm going to end up with, I'm going to finish on this in summary. Every day that we live a life, every year, every decade we live, we really do become smarter. We acquire more wisdom. We learn things, sometimes the hard way, hopefully oftentimes the easy way. So we have to use that to our advantage. We're almost like a chess master of life. And that's the reason why, even though as we get older, we are more likely to experience some of these interactions between stress and medical, medical and stress, stress and emotions, and then even medical and emotions, and then emotions are back onto medical. We really are, thank goodness, in the best position to manage some of these things because we can fall back on our life experience. And then I'll receive the calls where people will say, I handled this, that, and the other without any challenge. And now I really feel that talking to a counselor will will help me, because I just don't even know where to start with this one. So separate from whatever your age is, if you find that you're encountering an event, or maybe you're upset and not even sure why, reaching out for a psychology appointment may be very helpful to you, to help you bring your stress level down. When our stress is down, our emotional health goes up and our medical health goes up. And that's the circle we want to get into as well. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I will see you next Sunday. And Sunday, that will be February, last day of February, February 28th, 2021. Oh, and the topic I'm going to be talking about next week is how has the healthcare system changed during this pandemic? That is a very important conversation. Some of the things I'm seeing as a healthcare provider, then I get together with healthcare providers and we roll our eyes a little bit. It's some of the changes have been very good, some of them not so good. The